Welcome into the Irish NFL show. It is Thursday night football. The Denver Broncos going up against the Cleveland Browns. Hello to everybody from around the world, from Ireland watching. Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary. Lads, welcome in for a start. How we doing? Good?
Very good. The fact that when I look at the Browns injury list, it fills me with hope. That's a sorry state of affairs, but that's where we're at.
Happy days. Brian, all good from London?
Well, no, I'm in Dublin, so I'm not in London. But thanks very much, Michael.
From the weekend.
Of the weekend, I thought we were done and dusted with London. You know, we went through it on Monday night, and we have to move on, and we're moving on to an enticing Thursday night game. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if that's the case with the amount of players that are out. But for your guys, you know, you look at the fixtures at the start of the season, the schedule, and you say, I don't think we're going to win that game, and you write it off as a potential defeat. But with the season that it is and the injuries that the Browns have and the way they're playing, I think it's a real opportunity for the Broncos to rebound tonight.
Well, let's see what happens ahead of tonight. I'm really excited to talk about the football tonight. Delighted as well, lads, to be joined from ESPN by Seth Walder, who's an ESPN sports analytics writer. Seth, a very, very warm welcome into the Irish NFL show. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm jealous of your pint, though. It's a little early here for that for me, but looks good.
It's never too early. Seth, I'm buttoning in calm already. Have you any Irish heritage yourself, Seth? Have you ever been to Ireland before?
I have been to, I guess I do have Irish ancestors, but and I've been to Ireland. I actually grew up in London more than anywhere else, so it wasn't, Ireland's not too far. I've only been once, I guess, but I moved to England when I was 12, and I was there until I went to college, and my family was there a little later. So familiar with football fans on the other side of the Atlantic, I guess I should say.
Very good. And obviously we enjoyed the couple of games in London over the last few weeks. But the Broncos play this evening, Seth, and you were telling me that your big break, I guess, in the industry involved a former Bronco. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was working for the New York Daily News, covering high school sports in New York City, and the Jets traded for Tim Tebow in 2012. And it was obviously a huge deal. Tim Tebow was at the height of his celebrity. This is, after the famous Broncos playoff victory over the Steelers, and where he throws that touchdown pass in overtime. And so there was absolute Tebow mania. And my editor called me into the office and said, we'd like to send you to Jets training camp, which was in upstate New York. It meant, going away for a few weeks. But we just want you to write about Tim Tebow basically all the time. And I was like, sure, of course. And it ended up being a bit of a break for me, because that sort of got me that opportunity to do that. It worked out. The paper said, why don't you stay on, cover the Jets as a backup writer. And later on I became the beat writer. So it was a little bit of a break. I had a crazy assignment with Tebow too after that year, which didn't go very well. And the Tebow trade didn't work out, and the Jets he was still on the Jets like the following February. And they sent me out. My editor emailed me one night. It was like, do you know where Tim Tebow is? And I said, I think he's in Arizona. And he emailed me back and said, okay, why don't you fly there tomorrow and find him? And I was like, to be clear, I just said, I think he's like somewhere in the state, And he was like, yeah, you'll figure it out. Just go to Phoenix tomorrow and figure it out. And so me and a photographer flew to Arizona. We spent 5 days searching for him, and eventually we did find him, like running on a track, with some British Olympians actually. He was like trying to get faster at the time. So anyway, yes, a former Bronco did kind of get me a break, and that did really get me into NFL coverage.
Seth, over the past number of years, we've seen how important the analytics has come into the game. A case in point is that fourth down play on Monday night where the Bills went for it. Oh, in the past, it would have been take the field goal and take your chances in overtime. But as the years have gone on, and the probability percentages and all the coaches are working with that information, can you give us more in-depth, I suppose, of the role itself that you have within ESPN at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. At ESPN. So basically the way my job works is we have a sports analytics team made up of depending on how you count, 8 people. And it's mostly statisticians and developers. And our job is to create metrics for a variety of sports. We don't just cover the NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, though I primarily focus on NFL. My job is to take the work that they create and turn that into sports stories. So it's doing football analysis, right? Just same as any other analyst, but using these sort of advanced metrics. It's becoming so crucial to be able to, I think, I mean, I'm biased, but I think to be able to tell these stories, like you mentioned, on Monday night, the Bills go for that 4th down. And these are decisions that teams are having to make. So we might as well start thinking about it in the same way that teams are. And I'm sure there a lot went into that choice, but fundamentally the Bills are going into that with some sort of, decision-making parameters. And I assume that involved, they're one of the more analytically advanced franchises. So I would assume that did involve a lot of data work to prepare for situations like that. So yeah, that's my job at ESPN. And there's another role there too, which is to internally do some work. So when we create a new metric, it's not just going to appear on SportsCenter the next day. You have to, show people internally, why does this make us better? What does it tell us that we couldn't know before? What is it improve upon compared to what we had before? And so I do some of that work, and I'm really lucky because I get to work with some great statisticians, and I've been able to build up my own technical skills so I can do some things on my own too, which has really been a great opportunity.
Seth, I know this is not directly relevant to your role, but even from those Tebow days to now, the difference in this league in terms of the expansion internationally, but also recently more so in the States with analytics and betting is just it's fascinating to see from here, because obviously it's ingrained in our sport here. But I'm not sure if you work much on that with ESPN, but it's crazy to see because it's exploded in the US in the last year or so.
It's been completely wild. Even just my 4.5 years at ESPN, the difference between where we were then and where we are now is so incredible. I do go on our betting show, Daily Wager, every week and talk about our model, compared to the upcoming game spreads or maybe futures or all sorts of different bets, props, right? And I think, to me, there's a natural overlap in the work that I do and our team does with sports betting, because ultimately, the majority of what we're doing is what are we doing? We're predicting sports, right? And so that's what betting is. And so I think it's great, from the aspect of storytelling too. And one thing I love too about that show, for example, is I've gone on for a couple of years now, and I love the way that the producers approach it, which is sometimes I'll come in with an idea and say hey, this is kind of an advanced thing, and they're all for it. Their philosophy is bettors want the best information that you can give them. So if it's an advanced metric, who cares? Let's throw it out there and we'll take the time to explain it, because that's the best information that we can give. And so that's been really cool. They've been really open to that.
Said you had a couple of really interesting tweets earlier on. Your tweets are always interesting, but I really like the stuff around the expected versus actual in terms of receiving yards and in terms of over and underachieving wide receivers. For you, when you were putting that together, I'm just interested, I suppose, were there surprises in there, either in terms of the over or the underachievers, and what jumped out to you?
Yeah, this is something I started. I've had a version of this in past years. This year, I was able to sort of put it all together. So, and this is 95% not my work. So to be clear, the folks at NFL Next Gen Stats have an expected completion probability metric that they assign to every pass. So basically, based on how far downfield it is, is the quarterback throwing it on the run, separation from nearest defender or the sideline. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into it to determine the expected completion probability. They also have an expected yards after catch model. And so you can put those two things together and get an expected receiving yards, right? So on any given pass, maybe it's 10 yards downfield, there's a 60% chance of completion. So that's 6 expected air yards. And maybe it's 10 expected yards after catch, which would be a lot. But again, only a 60% completion rate. So that would be a pass of 12 expected receiving yards. Some guys are going to overperform that and some guys are going to underperform that. And I think it's really interesting to look at who does what. There are times when, I guess the thing that has really stood out is Jamar Chase this year. I mean, Jamar Chase is leading the league in receiving yards over expectation. And it's been both in both aspects. He's been catching passes at a higher rate than we would have expected, which is ironic given the storylines that were coming out in the preseason about his drops. And then he's also exceeded his yak expectation. So that's been really notable. On the flip side, Mike Evans has been underperforming, I guess, in terms of the relative to the opportunity. And I think, I get asked this question, is it from a fantasy perspective, does this mean this player is a buy low? I think the answer is that when it's a player like Mike Evans, who is established, has a long track record of being a good receiver, is playing with a good quarterback, his situation hasn't dramatically changed from last year, that the answer is yes. Like going forward, Mike Evans has gotten a lot of opportunity. Going forward, we should expect him to convert more of that.
Seth, it's lovely to see you. I'm a bit like Kramer. I just burst in halfway through in the middle of a conversation. And thinking of Seinfeld, George Costanza had a number of scenes with various Yankees over the time. And one of the sports where sports analytics obviously really took off, I'm thinking of Bill James, I'm thinking of the evolution of Moneyball. It's the old trope, but of course has always been baseball. I mean, statistics analysis back in the day, and obviously the greater sports analysis and all the more modern statistics obviously have come into the play in that sport. Can you ever see, or do you see football ever evolving to that level, or is it just always going to be too small of a proper sample size to have the same degree of analysis and extrapolation?
I think yes, it's just baseball's not going to stay still either. So if like it's not, I'm not sure football will catch baseball in that way, but will football be where baseball is now? Like, will football be there 10 years from now? I think about then. I mean, I'm basing that on, I do a survey every year of analytics staffers across the league. And I just published it a couple of weeks ago. And that was one of the questions I asked was, how many years behind baseball is the NFL, from average baseball team analytics wise to average football team analytics wise? And the average answer was 10 years. So, I mean, 10 years, first of all, is like an absolute eternity when it comes to all this stuff, which I think speaks to the gap between the two sports. There are some, it is a more complicated sport in the sense of, 22 players moving around. You don't have this kind of like isolated matchup the way that you do in baseball. But yeah, I think that we're going to see tremendous strides in football over the next 10 years. Like, I think 10 years ago, like you mentioned at the top, there would be a lot of fourth down decisions now where most coaches or every coach would go for it, and none of them would have gone for it 10 years ago, or one of them or something. So I think we're going to see a lot of change over the next 10 years, I would imagine.
And just a quick follow-up, Seth, how much does actually historic regression testing or patterns play into the analysis you're doing at the moment? I mean, like, for example, I don't know, Derrick Henry has never gone below 40 yards since October 2019. So to predict him to go under 40 yards in a game like last Monday would have been madness, clearly.
To go under 40? I mean, that would have been, I would hope you'd be getting really good odds if you got Derrick Henry under 40 rushing yards. Obviously, like, everything we do is rooted in the past, right? So everything we do is built on what's happened before, and how do you extrapolate going forward? I think if you were trying to model out what Derrick Henry is going to do on a game-by-game basis, and we don't have an individual like rushing projection model, it would Yeah, I mean, he would be an outlier. Like, let's, for sure. It doesn't mean the question is like, does his past performance the thing is his past performance has also been an outlier. So I'm not sure like that would necessarily be a problem.
Seth, you touched on the betting podcast. Our partner as Matchbook Exchange informed myself and Michael this afternoon that this time last week, the Browns were -6.5 points for this game this evening. But obviously, as the week has progressed since the previous games and all the injuries, it's essentially going to be a pick'em game come kickoff. What's your thoughts on the game? Do you feel the Browns can overcome the injuries, or is this a great opportunity for the Broncos this evening?
You know, I actually am really interested to see what happens tonight. So I'll say this. So we had, if I can pat our model on the back for just a second here, on Sunday night, it was 5 at like a 9 p.m. Sunday night last year. So I know it started higher than that. At that point, I do an early look ahead lines story for ESPN. And that was one that jumped out because I said, we had it at 3. And it didn't know that Baker Mayfield had just attended his post-game press conference in a sling. And so whether he was going to play or not, who knew? But like when you're showing up to that press conference in a sling, that's not a good sign. So we had that lower. Now with Mayfield out, we're right in line with the market. So the line when I last checked it a bit ago was Browns -1.5.
Yeah.
And we have Browns by 1.8. So we're right there on the same. I think that, to me, the interesting thing that's going to be tonight, actually a couple things. Number one, the Browns rushing game they're really relying on it. And it's not normally, if I'm, an analytics guy would come in criticizing how much a team runs, right? But the Browns are an exception in that they actually have been more efficient running the football than they have been passing the ball. And that's with their starting quarterback back there as well. So to me, that's interesting thing number one. The other thing though, is that their running backs have been really effective. So Next Gen Stats has this great metric called rush yards over expectation, which is basically at the point of handoff, what is the expected rushing yards that a running back ought to get based on the positioning and, the direction each player is facing, the speed at their moment. So it's sort of looking at this entire image of 22 players and saying, okay, this run should go for 5, say. And then how much do the running backs exceed that? Nick Chubb is the guy that more than anybody else pretty much over the last couple of years has exceeded rush yards over expectation. So I'm really curious to see what their running game is like without him and Hunt this week. And then the last thing to me about this game that's interesting is if Jack Conklin is out again, it depends on, with Wills and Conklin, both tackles were gone last week. I think that's problematic. They both score really high in our pass blocking metric. If Conklin's out, that's probably where Von Miller is going to be most of the time. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. It'll be interesting either way, but if Conklin's out, that could be a problem for Case Keenum and the Browns.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens tonight. Seth, I want to thank you very much for coming on, man. You're welcome on any time, and all the very best for the rest of the season. Thanks so much, Seth.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it. Always love NFL fans on the other side.
Appreciate Seth. Chat to you soon. All the best.
Thanks, Seth. Take care.
Great to have Seth Walder on. Check out Seth on Twitter as well. His Twitter bio is linked on our page at the minute. We've put it on our page. We are joined now by the king of Sky Sports NFL.
King, yeah.
Well, we've got Neil, but we also got Jeff Ryan. But Jeff, thanks for stopping in, man. Can you hear us?
Slante, fellas. I tell you what an awesome thing. You're up there asking questions of Urban Meyer, and he can't understand a word. That was priceless today, fellas. I retweeted it. He doesn't speak Guinness, I guess.
Jeff, Mark was in the other room asking Tua questions about his weekend in London, and he started referring to being on golf courses. So I'm sure all the Dolphins fans are kind of saying, "We've just lost a tough game, and you're answering questions about golf courses."
You can't win, baby. You can't win when you're 1-5. That's for damn sure.
Jeff, I'm interested. They are obviously they got the win, and they are 1-5. But how impressed? And look, he's the number one overall pick. But how impressed have you been with Trevor Lawrence over the last few weeks, in particular?
He's obviously going through the growth that all rookie quarterbacks go through. learning on the job in the National Football League is a hard place to learn on the job. It's an unforgiving environment, and you see progress every week. And I think if you're a Jacksonville fan, you have to feel like this might be a legitimate guy. They've been down this road before. Blake Bortles and so I think they have a right to be skeptical a little bit. But I tell you what, guys, I have seen much growth in that kid in the last 3 weeks.
Jeff, I feel bad asking a fellow coach this question, but we were talking about this on Monday night. You wouldn't have predicted John Gruden being gone from the Raiders, say 2-3 weeks ago. But there is always a clock on NFL coaches. I mean, there's only 32 jobs, and a hell of a lot of people want those jobs. And inevitably, the question was going to be a bit about Urban Meyer. If he went 0-6, and with everything that's gone on in Jacksonville, what was going to happen to him? But now Brian Flores is 1-5, and we asked him a few questions in his press interview, but the Miami beat writers were almost salivating at him and saying, why is it all going wrong, Brian? And, what about you? And what's your responsibility on all of this? I mean, whether Brian Flores or another, I mean, who do you really see as maybe being the next big NFL coach that's on the hot seat and might not be there in a few weeks' time?
Well, I tell you what, there's 32 of them in that league. There's 9 of them in our league. So there's 41 on the planet. And I would say of that 41, other than maybe Belichick, there's 40 of them are on the hot seat. It's just a matter of time. I had a friend of mine describe it to me one time as you take a head job in pro football and they point a gun at you and pull the trigger. And it's just how long can you stay in front of the bullet? And that's just life in this business. And there seems to be nothing, and this is, I think, a bit of an American cultural thing, but, America loves to create heroes. And the thing they love next most to that, or maybe more than that even, is they love to see those heroes fall. And I think that's what happens to coaches. As soon as you're hired, you're on the hot seat. Bum Phillips, the great Oiler head coach for all those years, said it perfectly. He said, there's only 2 kinds of coaches, them's that's been fired and them's that's going to get fired. So I think Flores is bought himself some time because of, the year that they had last year. I mean, here was a guy that got some votes for coach of the year. And certainly, but you got to remember now, Mr. Ross is in his 80s and he doesn't have a lot of seasons left and he desperately wants to win a Super Bowl. So I think that'll play into this thing. I think Zimmer's a guy that's in that conversation. Fangio's a guy who could get in that conversation real fast if they continue to tail off. Everybody. I mean, it's just the nature of the business. And, there are guys that you say, well, there's no way that could happen. Well, think again, because it might.
Jeff, I have to say, you mentioned the great Bum Phillips there. One of my favorite quotes by him was about another Dolphins legend, Don Shula, when he said, Shula will take his and beat you, and then he could take yours and beat you as well. Basically saying he could coach up anybody to beat the other side in relation to it. He had a great turn of phrase, for sure.
Yeah, Bum was, behind the cowboy hat and the big belt buckle and, the Marlboro coat that he wore on the sidelines in cold weather. There was a very intelligent human being. I mean, Bum was a high school teacher and coach when he started in the business. And then he rose through the college ranks and really had a very, very fast track to the National Football League because he was such an outstanding coach, so intelligent, great, one of the really, really best defensive coaches of his era.
Jeff, November the 7th, trade deadline. Over the past few days, we've seen speculation around the teams that are not playing particularly well, potentially trading players away for picks moving forward already towards the draft and all that comes with that. But obviously the Deshaun Watson news broke yesterday that it looks like the Dolphins are seriously making a play for him now. Are you surprised, bearing in mind that we don't really know what's going to happen in the long run in terms of the off-the-field stuff that needs to be cleared up?
No, I'm not surprised because he's probably one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league when he's healthy and playing with good players around him. Here's a guy that's hung some crazy numbers and has had a rotation of bad offensive linemen in front of him. And, so you think about what he could do with weapons. Now, obviously, there's so much that has to play into that because you mentioned all the offseason stuff, all the off-field stuff. What's the league going to do? All of those things. So you're taking some risk. It's kind of a buyer beware situation if you go down that road. But certainly for teams that are trying to, make a jump or make a step, he's a guy that you'd have to talk about. And the Dolphins are in a unique position in that it's going to be a price tag that comes with it. But the Dolphins are one of the few teams that has the kind of draft collateral still that that Houston would be interested in. It's a shame that he's not playing because we as fans certainly miss having a transcendent talent like that at quarterback playing in the league.
Jeffrey, just finally, man, you must have been very proud watching London last weekend after your whole time in Sky Sports Studios, but just everything. It's great to have it back close to home, but also to see the growth, the development of the league. And also, two-part question to round us off here, as we have Lindsey Jones coming on. Are we doing a show tomorrow night? Have you got an exclusive? Who's the guest, or what's going on?
We are percolating up right now. Coffee with Coach for tomorrow. I'm in negotiations. Let me talk like I'm a big shot, right? We can all kid each other. I'm in negotiations with a certain Sebastian Vollmer, who is a Super Bowl champion, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and really instrumental in what's going on in the NFL in Germany. The 3 cities have been selected. Sebastian was a part of that process. I'm trying to get him on tomorrow to talk about, not only that, but how he thinks the Patriots are doing. He was a great player for the Patriots, and he's a great visit. Really one of our own because he was a guy that came through the NFL player pathway program when I worked there, and he's been a very close friend of mine ever since, and just wrote his second book. So I was going to give him a chance to, pimp his book a little bit on the show. But my biggest takeaway from London was obviously the fact that it's the second best environment for an NFL game that you'll find outside the Super Bowl, because it's the only one where you go, and you guys mentioned it, every one of 32 jerseys and is represented, and we still see cheeseheads from Scotland and Barcelona Dragon jerseys and Frankfurt Galaxy jerseys, and so that part I loved about it. The other thing was it was really cool to watch what you guys did, and I mean that sincerely. I thought that was really, really big time and a big step, and for you guys to get over there and reclaim the rooftop that once the Beatles held a free concert on. I mean, how cool was that? That you guys came and took that mantle. But it was great to see you guys over there, and I thought you did a fantastic job. And I really, really admire your work and never miss a show.
Jeff, just sorry, one more. You two did a video on the roof in LA back in the day, and that's the next one. That'll be the one for the Super Bowl in February.
All right, hey fellas, maybe we could do it together. We'll break ground, as they say.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, Jeff. We'd be delighted to have you join us. Whether it's LA, whether it's London, we're always delighted to talk to Jeff Reinbold. I called you inimitable on Twitter, and I think it's fitting. Jeff, thanks for taking the time to chat to us this evening, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the Irish NFL show again soon.
Hey, I tell you what, we got to do a show when I come over to do the back half of the season for Sky. I'd love to come over and do a show with you guys on the Emerald Isle. That'd be a lot of fun. I appreciate you. Keep doing your thing. I love it. Aloha.
Jeff, thanks a million, man. See you tomorrow.
Take care.
Right, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon. Take care. God bless. Jeff Reinbold on the show. Delighted to have Jeff, and we'll be on tomorrow night Coffee with Coach, and he is going to do a show in Dublin in some capacity. Our final guest tonight needs no introduction, but we've had her on before from The Athletic, Lindsey Jones. Lindsey, hopefully the Wi-Fi is working okay. I'm going to bring you in. Thanks so much for waiting, Lindsey. Welcome in again. Great to have you back in the show.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
It's going good. And look, Lindsey, thanks so much for coming on. You're talking, 3 or 4 hours out from the Broncos playing the Browns. Obviously, you're based in Denver. It's been an interesting 6 weeks, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah. I mean, this has been quite a roller coaster season for the Broncos where, they probably were never as good as their 3-0 record indicated. I'm not sure if they're as bad as, maybe they've been over the last couple of weeks. I did go to 2 of those games, the 2 games that were played here in person, against the Ravens and against the Raiders last week. And there was a lot of like, yikes going on about what the Broncos were putting out on the field. And they still have a lot of talent. You just think that, like, okay, you gotta start pulling through here, because there was so much to like early in the season that I don't think was just because of the competition that they were playing. I don't think it was just because they were playing the Jets, the Giants, and the Jags. That certainly helped. But yeah, I think maybe they were overperforming early and now underperforming now. And, maybe 3-3 is accurate, but they've just been all over the place with the type of performances we've seen.
Lindsey, I suppose someone else who got off to a hot start was your 5-year-old in her picks. We have a kind of a competitive battle going on between the 4 of us in terms of picks. But could you talk to us about Lita's picks?
Sure. Yeah, and would not be surprised if at some point in the next couple minutes she comes bursting through that door. She just got home from kindergarten about 10 minutes ago. And my husband is downstairs, like, plying her with snacks to say, don't interrupt mommy right now. But she absolutely might make an appearance. But yeah, so we started doing this last season, where it kind of just started out like we would write down her picks on a piece of paper and I would like post a picture. And then I was like, I have all this podcasting equipment. Like, let's like record them and just like post it on Twitter. And the woman who produces the Athletic Football Show that I do once a week has so graciously added another thing to her plate and has turned Lena's recording into a cute little podcast. And now she wants to do it on video. So I've been posting them on my on YouTube, where I have no followers. I think they have like 10 viewers. I'll text you the link if you want to see it. Because we cut it down to like a 2-minute segment for Twitter, where she usually goes for 7 minutes, but she's getting into it. And she has a very short attention span. She's 5. She doesn't, watch full games, but she likes watching a little bit. She's very into the mascots, the colors of the teams, and then a couple of the players. Like, she knows a couple guys, she's got an unhealthy fascination with Tom Brady, Josh Allen, she seems to know. And I have a friend who is from Buffalo, who just actually sent her a Buffalo Bills hat. So now she has a Broncos jersey, a Bills hat, and a Cleveland Browns shirt, which means she is super conflicted. But yeah, she had a couple of really good weeks. I think she went 11-5 in week 2 or 3. And then she had a 12-4 week early. So she was just on a roll. We've taken a little step back lately. And I feel like I've failed a little bit here as a parent, and then also as a NFL reporter. And that last week, I talked her out of changing 2 of her picks. She picked the Jaguars to beat the Dolphins. And I was like, are you sure? And she goes, well, are the Jaguars good? And I said, no, they're not good. And I said, but also the Dolphins aren't good. And she said, okay, the Dolphins. So I messed up there. And then I talked her out of picking the Titans on Monday Night Football. So I made a promise to her this week that I would not change any of her picks. She gets to go ahead and do it. I will not interfere. And she will probably be right more often than I am. So, but it's been fun. We really like it. Her newest picks, I'll post them shortly. I'll send you over the link right now while we...
Lindsey, I have a 5-year-old daughter as well, but the best I get is, oh no, daddy's football is on again, and walks out of the room. So.
Yeah, we have to do a lot of we'll give her tablet a little bit during a primetime game, or, so we can put the TV on the big screen, or I put it here on my phone and she gets to watch Disney Plus or whatever she wants. She has figured out that, or she knows that the primetime games, which is right at her bedtime. So games kick off here in Denver at 6:20, which is, getting right into dinner time, bedtime. She knows that they stream on my phone. And so we'll get in bed, and it's her way of prolonging bedtime. It's like, mommy, can I watch football? And I'm helpless, right? I'm like, okay, I guess we'll watch football. And then half an hour later, it's past bedtime, and we're still watching the 4th quarter of some random Monday night game.
Yeah, when it comes to iPhones, I think me and Mark know that more with children. Lindsey, you touched on the mixed start to the season for the Broncos, and another team in the division that's had a very mixed start, and probably quite surprising is the Chiefs. Are you taken back by how off-putting they have been, in terms of the defense in particular?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think we've seen stretches from the Chiefs defense in recent seasons. I think more so in 2018 and 2019, where you had to wonder like, oh, this defense, like this might be a liability. Is this a fatal flaw? They're giving up a lot of yards. They would then seem to, come up with the big turnover. They would be really good in the red zone. And then obviously they would, they played well later in the season. But this feels different. This feels like a much more significant problem that you can't just fix through X's and O's, that like Steve Spagnuolo isn't going to be able to just scheme his way out of this, that there are some pretty significant talent deficiencies, speed deficiencies, especially. I mean, there's just not a lot of team speed on that defense. They're kind of old. They're not getting consistent pass rush. And a lot of the moves that they've made to try to fix that defense, or to, the free agents that they've signed, it hasn't really worked out. The Frank Clark trade, by pretty much any objective measure, has not worked out for the Chiefs. He had a couple nice games during their Super Bowl run a couple of years ago, but he was not that consistent presence. And he's been an off-field headache. He's, he's got some pretty significant legal issues going on right now, which were things that the Chiefs knew could happen. I mean, he was a guy who was off of a lot of teams' draft boards when he came out of Michigan, because he was actually kicked off the team. There was domestic violence allegation. I mean, there were all sorts of character red flags. I remember talking to a team executive a couple of years ago who said that, one, he was never on their draft board, and he would not be on their free agent board ever as well. And that was when he was like playing really well with the Seahawks. He just was that much of a liability. So that move has not paid off. Chris Jones, I think he deserved that contract. I was glad that they paid Chris Jones, but he's been hurt. And if there's not good edge pressure around him, there's only so much, really, and albeit a really disruptive defensive tackle can do. And, I think he's played well when he's been healthy, but he has not been consistently healthy. And they have all sorts of issues on their back end. Tyrann Mathieu is their best defensive player, can kind of work around that. Sometimes he's definitely getting older. But yeah, the corner is an issue. The other safety spot is an issue. Their linebacking core is an issue. So this is a problem. The other problem really with the Chiefs is that they've been turning over the ball a ton. And that is just very out of character for Patrick Mahomes. Even for a guy who takes as many kind of risks as he does and makes as many out of schedule throws with crazy arm angles and all of that sort of stuff, he never would put the ball, or he very rarely would put the ball in a position that was reckless, right? I mean, it was a lot of, but he's been, turning the ball over a lot. It's been a little bit baffling. And part of me is like, okay, is he feeling that he has to do more now because he knows that his defense is such a liability, and he feels like he has to hit that home run every single time he's on the field. They're in these close games late, and, he's throwing an interception on first down when he's trying to lead a fourth quarter, game tying or game winning drive. That's just stuff that he wasn't doing a couple of years ago. So I still think they're going to win a lot of games. I think they're going to score 30 plus points more often than not, but they're going to be in these situations where they're not going to be blowing teams out anymore. They're going to have to win by shootouts. And if we circle back to the Broncos, that's my big question now is, are the Broncos up for that? We know that the Raiders are going to be. The Raiders are able to score a lot. And we absolutely know that the Chargers are, because the Chargers have already beaten them in that type of game at Arrowhead Stadium. So are the Broncos up for scoring 30 plus points a game, even against the worst defense in the NFL? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
I think Colum's expression gives away the answer
Yeah.
to that a little bit, to be honest.
Well, and that's where I came back to when, back at the draft, when the Broncos took Patrick Surtain instead of Justin Fields or Mac Jones. I mean, I think much of the focus is on Justin Fields, certainly, is that I think Patrick Surtain is a really good player. And I think he's probably going to be a really good player for a long time. He's going to have probably a really long, productive NFL career. But does he catch you up to the Chiefs? Does he make you that much more competitive in your own division, where you're playing in a division now that has Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr? And I know a lot of people like to laugh at Derek Carr or whatever, say, oh, it's Derek Carr, but he's been playing really, really, really well lately. And, you don't want to be the team in the division that has the worst quarterback and potentially the worst quarterback by a big margin. And that's what the Broncos are right now. And I'm not sure how much, taking arguably the best cornerback in that draft has made them, and how much, if that has closed the gap with the Chiefs or the Chargers, or the Raiders at all.
Lindsey, it feels mean to say it, but I remember in preseason I joked that the Broncos had a decision to make between the 5th best quarterback in the AFC West and the 6th best quarterback in the AFC West because
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I know. But actually, you mentioned about picks. I have to call out Colin Cronin actually on Sunday, 11 out of 12 games he got.
There you go.
Right, so he's keeping up with your 5-year-old just about. It's good going.
Fair play, Colin.
He's had 2 really good weeks. Sorry, Mark.
No, that's right. I was also going to empathize because I also have an unnatural obsession with Tom Brady. So me and your 5-year-old have something in common as well.
She has a teddy bear named after Tom Brady. I think where this came from is that every year when I go to the Super Bowl, they have, except for last year, which was odd, they have a little bear. It's like kind of like the Beanie Babies bear, and it's in the Super Bowl colors for whatever the Super Bowl city and the logo. So I always get her one. And then we name it after the Super Bowl MVP. So she has the first one is the Von Miller bear from Super Bowl 50 when I was pregnant, and then pregnant with her. So that was technically her first Super Bowl. And then, so she has a Tom Brady, a Julian Edelman, a Nick Foles, a Patrick Mahomes, and then now I guess she would have had a second Tom Brady bear. We named him after Gronkowski. So we didn't have 2 Tom Brady bears, but she always picks the Brady bear as her favorite one for.
I don't blame her. I don't blame her. Lindsey, looking at the game tonight, right? We've got 2 teams who are 3-3, but I can't help but think of the Greek mythology tale of Sisyphus. He escaped death twice, and then he was condemned by Hades to continue to roll a rock to the top of the hill, which would always fall down before he got to it. And he was doomed to do that for all of eternity. And I use the example of Sisyphus because surely that's what it's like to be a Browns fan. After so many years in the Factory of Sadness, like great playoff run last year, and then this year was going to be their year. So much positivism, so much enthusiasm. And you look into this game, they're likely missing Conklin and Willis again, likely missing both their starting running backs. Mayfield, as we know, is out. Their defense is in a complete and utter mess. JC Tretter's still out of center. I mean, the football gods just hate Cleveland, basically.
I think that might be part of it. I think I think we're probably a little bit an hour and a half away or so from the inactives coming out. About an hour and a half away from the inactives coming out. I think ultimately they're going to have a lot of those questionable guys back. Jed Wills is going to play at left tackle, but Jack Conklin is definitely not out. So his backup, Blake Hance, is the guy who's going to have to go against Von Miller when Von Miller is super pissed off and ready to kill him, which, I mean, for Von Miller's sake, I hope he has a big game. He really needs that. The Broncos certainly need that. But yeah, I mean, there is this thing about like, oh, are they snake bit now? Because yeah, I mean, they were kind of on this run. I mean, the early part of their schedule was brutal. I mean, they had to go to Kansas City in week 1. They've already played against the Chargers, and that game was in LA. That was one of the best, like craziest games of the season. I loved every second of that game. And then they had to play the Cardinals last week, which that was a game that, you know, probably when the schedule came out, they thought like, oh, our home game against the Cardinals. But now it's like the undefeated, like juggernaut Arizona Cardinals. So they've arguably had the hardest schedule of anybody through the first third of the season. And they did not come out of it great. I mean, 3-3 is not great, especially in that division where the Bengals are surging and the Ravens look like they might be the best team in the AFC right now. So that's tough. I mean, I still think that the Browns are in that top 7 best teams in the AFC, but these injuries are hitting them at a really, really bad time. You know, we don't know, none of us know anything about Dearness Johnson, who's the backup running back. Those of you guys follow the Broncos, so we all know about Case Keenum, where, you know, I don't think I'd want Case Keenum to be my long-term starting quarterback, but as far as like a kind of a spot backup, this might actually be an okay situation for Cleveland. Like he has been in this situation before and has played well. And, you know, he has a history with Kevin Stefanski. So you have to hope that if you're a Browns fan, that this will work, that Stefanski knows what to do to make Case Keenum succeed. They'll probably put in a lot of play action. They'll try to get him out of the pocket a little bit. It'll be a lot of short, you know, quick reads. You know, I think Stefanski will be able to put him in a situation to succeed. They're going to have a lot of short passes because with that tackle situation, you'd think Von Miller would be getting back there. But I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're the other thing, if you're a Browns fan, is that the Broncos now are kind of like a get right game. I mean, that's what they were for the Raiders last week. The Broncos haven't been rushing the passer well. They haven't been stopping the run well. There's not a whole lot of things that you could actually look at the Broncos and say, oh, we're scared of that they've been doing well from the last 3 weeks of the season. So that it makes it really intriguing. I've been a little bit down on this matchup. One of our running bits on the Athletic Football Show is to sell me on Thursday Night Football, because a lot of the games early in the season have been really bad. And it was a stretch yesterday to make this game super intriguing for a national audience. And then my co-host Robert Mays jumped in to remind and say, this game actually matters. These are two teams that if you looked at the playoff standings right now, both of these teams are in there. So this is the game that ultimately probably will matter for playoff positioning later in the season. It just doesn't feel like it right now, given where both of these teams are at in this moment in week 7.
Obviously, Case Keenum or Case Keeson, as John Elway calls him. Also, Lindsey called him a short-term solution. So if I was Case Keenum or Case Keeson tonight, I'm looking at this game and I'm going, here we go. Obviously being based in Denver and covering the Broncos and the NFL in general, how alarmed were you with this team last week? Let's take away the fact they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, because take away that and it's not great. Yeah,
it was pretty troubling. And I didn't see their first 3 games live. I watched mostly those games on television because they were 1 in New York and 1 in Jacksonville. And then I was on the road during one of their other home game. But watching them on TV, they looked different and dynamic, and there were just these different elements to the offense. And then all of a sudden, after a couple minutes into that Ravens game a couple weeks ago, and then absolutely for the 3 weeks since, it just feels like they're right back where they were in 2018, 2019, 2020, where it's just an offense that can't consistently put together long drives. They're constantly in 3rd and long. Garrett Bowles is committing penalties, underperforming defense. And that's just frustrating. And I'm sure it's frustrating for Broncos fans to, how you got that glimmer of hope, right? Of there's progress happening. We're going to be a competitive, relevant team in the AFC. And then it just felt like this giant step back. And, I think a lot of it is coming down to coaching at this point. I mean, they've acquired a lot of talent, and, I think there's a lot to like about Vic Fangio, but I also think the concerns about his in-game coaching are very, very valid. And at some point, they're just not getting the most out of the guys that they have.
When Mark was talking about Sisyphus, I thought he was going to be talking about Broncos and QBs. And
I did too.
I suppose we've seen this week, Lindsey Vaughn talk about, how angry he is, and they're harking back to 2018 and that Cards game, but the Broncos finished 2018 6-10. So I don't know whether that's one I want to hark back to, but delving maybe a little bit further on the coaching, the Broncos have given up 2+ sacks in every single game. This is year 3 of Mike Munchak. This was supposed to be the best line coach in the league. What is going on in Denver?
Yeah, I mean, and I think for actually probably over the last year or so, the offensive line has actually been one of the better stories and one of the more positive things coming out of here, because you did see market growth, especially out of Garrett Bowles. Lloyd Cushenberry at center it was a rough start to his career. He kind of got put into that situation as a rookie starter last year right away, but I think he got better as the season went on. They have dealt with some considerable injuries on that line this year. There was that game a couple weeks ago where they didn't have Dalton Risner, nor did they have Graham Glasgow. That's a big deal to lose both of your starting guards. And those are two, I wouldn't say very good players. I think they're very, very competent, above average players. So, I think that has hurt. The consistency of what the lineup has looked like has hurt them. But yeah, I mean, they just need to be better as a whole. And, I think Munchak's strengths are that he is one of the best teachers in the NFL. And so I think he does a really great job of developing these guys, these young players, turning them into, quality players. I mean, the fact that Garrett Bowles went from being a guy who probably shouldn't have been in the NFL or not, at least not a starting franchise level left tackle a couple of years ago, to a guy who played really well last season. I mean, that's amazing. And now he's regressed a bit. Potentially last year they weren't calling offensive holding league wide that much. That probably helped Garrett Bowles, probably made him a lot of money. Now, there's a little bit more point of emphasis on that from the officiating perspective, which is probably not doing him any favors. But yeah, it's just another part, though, that's just a little disappointing, where you've seen some regression there. And then I will say the right tackle position just continues to be a problem. Can you guys remember the last time that the Broncos had a really good, stable right tackle? I mean,
you're probably going back to the last time the Broncos were able to cover a tight end, Lindsey, but it's for a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't really happened. And the carousel of quarterbacks has kind of overshadowed the carousel of right tackles. But, that it's been a major problem. They've spent a ton of money there and gotten no return on the investments that they've made at that position. And almost to the point that it's we're just going to trot out some bodies and see who's there, instead of, throwing Jawan James a considerable amount of money or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it has been an issue, and it's going to continue to be an issue right now, especially, Teddy Bridgewater. He's going to play tonight. I mean, we'll see the inactives in about an hour, but he's going to try to give it a go. But he's got this foot injury, a quad injury. He's not going to be that mobile tonight. If Drew Lock has to play, he's a guy who tends to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. So it's definitely something to watch if they can protect two guys who, to say they're injury prone would probably be putting it nicely.
Lindsey, just stepping away from tonight's game, the season, we're reaching, nearly the mid half of the season. Obviously, we've got the extra game this year. Is there any particular teams that you've enjoyed watching, or you're pleasantly surprised how well they're doing?
The Chargers have been pretty fun. I mean, they got blown out last week against Baltimore, but I'd say the Ravens are probably one of the other teams that I've been really excited about, just because they've been able to win so many different ways. I mean, we saw what happened when they came into Denver and the Broncos completely took away their running game, and Lamar Jackson was just pew, pew, pew. I think it was at that point, it was his highest passing yardage in a game. I think he surpassed it the following week. So they're winning with their passing game. They obviously can run the ball if they need to. They've, gotten their defense has been surprisingly good given how much turnover there's been and the injury issues that they had in the summer. So the Ravens have been fun. Chargers have, Justin Herbert is a stud. I mean, there's just no other way around it. I mean, he's been really, really fun to watch. And we're all into the Brandon Staley experience. I mean, he's the NFL's Ted Lasso, right? Of positivity and communication and
believe, Lindsey, believe.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely happening there. So, and the AFC, I would say those are the two that have been jumping out at me. And then the Cowboys, which is kind of wild. They, I think, are legitimately really, really good. I don't know if once we get to January, we're talking about playoffs and how that's all going to go. I don't know how much of their defensive success has been a little bit of luck or smoke and mirrors, and how much, they can continue to rely on Randy Gregory to be a consistent pass rusher for them. But they've been getting really good production out of their young players. Micah Parsons has been awesome. Their first round pick, Trayvon Diggs, obviously, I think he has 7 interceptions right now, which, some of that is luck. Some of that is, you keep throwing at him and he's gonna make these picks. He's also going to give up some big plays, as we saw last week against New England, where he went basically back-to-back plays with a pick 6 and a 75-yard touchdown allowed. That's kind of the Trayvon Diggs experience. But I think the Cowboys are going to be really good. Their offense is fun. Dak Prescott is, he's got to win the Comeback Player of the Year award, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's squarely in the MVP conversation by the end of the year as well.
Trayvon Diggs experience a bit different from the Jimi Hendrix experience, but similar philosophy.
Still fun, right?
Yeah, also, I'm a bit annoyed at you and Colin thinking I was going to say that a Broncos quarterback was a Sisyphean task. Like, no, I mean, Morpheus, the god of sleep and dreams, would be the depiction for Broncos quarterbacks, guys. That's really the way it would go. Lindsay, let's flip that question the other way around, though. I mean, let's ignore the Broncos, who you've got a bit of disappointment in, although they're on their way to a 4-5 start, which is progress from the last 4 seasons.
I'm like a disappointed parent, right? I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I want better for them. Yeah.
We get it. But I mean, outside of them, who has been a bit of a letdown for you this season that you were expecting more from and you just haven't seen it?
Yeah, the Seahawks have been a disappointment even before Russell Wilson's finger injury. I think, a lot of us came into this year saying like the NFC West is going to be bonkers. All of these teams are going to be really good. And the Seahawks just haven't been. Their defense has been bad. We haven't seen the kind of the progress in the offense that maybe we're hoping to see with the arrival of Shane Waldron as the new offensive coordinator, and now without Russell Wilson, it's kind of like, I think Geno Smith is going to do okay. Like he's as good of a backup quarterback as there is in the NFL. But, if this was going to be a potential, like a division that was coming down to the very end of the season, to week 17, week 18 for 2, maybe 3 playoff spots, I just think the Seahawks are pretty quickly out of that conversation. So that's been fairly disappointing. I'm trying to think who else has been super. The Steelers have been, although I wasn't very high on them. I thought they were going to take a step back this year. So yeah, that's probably, I guess the Seahawks are the one that I'm just like most disappointed in at this point.
My bad. I was on mute. I had to show up in some sort of colors, even though it's Demarius Thomas. But Lindsay, just wanted to thank you for coming on. Obviously, on game day, you're busy yourself. Just finally, I've put a link up to subscribe if you want to have a shout out for the Athletic, and also who have you got tonight? Because you're gonna have to, and I don't want to give away spoilers here, Lindsay, but you're gonna have to convince me here, because at the minute I've never felt as hopeless for a Broncos primetime game, the only primetime game this season.
Yeah, that is telling about kind of where the Broncos are at in the NFL landscape, that this Thursday night game is their only primetime game. Remember a couple of years ago, during the Peyton Manning years, it was 5 and then hoping they could maybe get flexed into another one. They were always, you could always count on Monday night games, Sunday night games, and now not even a home game in a primetime slot. So that's not great. I will say Lena picked the Broncos. And she tends to be right more often than I am. So maybe I have to go with my 5-year-old's pick with the Broncos. But I was really disappointed in the product that I saw from the Broncos last week against the Raiders. And, that was a game that they absolutely should have won, right? I think talent-wise, they should be pretty close with the Raiders. Coaching-wise, they should have been able to outcoach a Raiders team that was in complete disarray, and they didn't. So, with all of the injuries that the Browns have right now, they shouldn't win this game. But given what my eyes have shown me the last couple of weeks, I have a really hard time picking the Broncos. But because Lena picked them, I will pick them as well.
Yeah, Lindsay, it's quite something that the Browns had 20 guys on the injury list at one point this week, and we're still saying it's a coin toss. But look, we always enjoy talking ball with you, and we just want to thank you for taking the time to join us, and hopefully we can have you back on again. I know we'll have you on again in the off season, because there's going to be that whole Broncos ownership situation to talk about.
Oh yeah, that mess.
The yearly quarterback situation, Lindsay. The yearly quarterback situation.
That too, and probably coaching changes. But for now, thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the game tonight. Thank you very much. And you can check out Lindsay's work on The Athletic. We've put a link on Twitter now as well. There's currently a discount. You can subscribe both in the UK and in Ireland. Thanks very much to Lindsay for coming on. Lads, welcome in. We've got Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, and David Duval on the show tonight. There's loads of comments here, gentlemen. Loads of comments. I know we're going to have a quick chat here, but let's try and get them very quickly. Owen Farrell, Niner Nation. Fred Flunk says, story, lads.
Good old Fred.
Aaron Van Buren, go Cards. Let's see. Well, there's loads of stuff here, lads. Anthony Hayes, incredibly, I fought Derrick Henry under 95. Okay, yeah.
That's
Thank
a
you
great
for that.
one, Michael. That's a great one. In fact, I mean, you were only 103 yards out. Seriously.
I woke up on Tuesday morning and the fear that I had, boys. I was like, looks like a close enough game. I was like,
I woke up on Tuesday morning to Derrick Henry
Back in a
plus
second.
2 touchdowns and plus three touchdowns on the betting side of things. Happy days. And the only one to pick the Titans, but we won't harp on too much about that.
No, good call on that, Brian. I mean, they did it like we thought they might. Rely on the run game, keep it tight, and the defense.
High scoring
we
affair.
criticized, came up big. Yeah, they came up big at the end with that 4th down stop, so that was huge.
Can I just give a shout out to the boys in work though that seen the Duval segment on Monday night, and everybody was talking about it on Tuesday. So you're famous, Mark. Well done.
Sounds good, mate. Sounds good. I actually did pick Henry over 95.5 yards as well after our segment, Michael. So sorry, I didn't go with it.
Michael, we also have to declare something to the audience this evening. It's Marco's birthday today.
Is it?
You don't have to.
Nobody told me.
We'll move swiftly.
Nobody told me. And you know what? Like, you know, these situations are, you know, ones that it's great for a start that it's obviously on a Thursday night, right? And I think, Mark, you know, it's great that you can have a little Thursday night football action and enjoy the Broncos and see who's going to win tonight. And we are going to get our picks in the second column and see what we think. But I guess for you, Mark, it's just anyway, I typed in happy birthday, Mark. I thought it'd be like happy birthday. Clearly not.
We'd like
Colin,
to
you're very
apologise to all
quiet.
listeners' eardrums.
I left a couple of letters out on that.
Colin, you've recovered from London. And Colin, I was watching the show earlier on back from Monday. Jesus Christ. If anybody wants to have a laugh, watch that show back. It literally started off like this. Welcome into the Irish NFL show, presented by Trust and Matchbook Colin as well.
Yeah, well, I think tonight, despite what I think the game will be, I think it's been a pretty high octane show this evening. I don't know if the game is going to live up to that, given that to be honest, it might be that Chubb and Hunt being out is probably an even bigger loss to the Browns than losing their QB, which is saying something. You've seen Von Miller. If people haven't seen it, Von Miller's comments during the week that he doesn't care who's playing tackle, he's going to kill them. And I'm intrigued to see because
Is it?
Yeah, that's what he
actually
said.
say that?
That's what
He has like, where's he been the last 2 weeks? Barbados, Hawaii.
That's
Has he
said.
watched The Last Boy Scout a few too many times?
Well, Von said the same against the Cards a few years ago. In fairness, did show up, and the Raiders over the last few years have been very effective at, I suppose. There you go. Look at that. Ensuring that they get the ball out quick, and the Broncos have never responded to that. There's also the fact that I keep repeating, Derek Carr had the highest passer rating in the NFL last week against Vic Fangio's defense. So we really are in for one this evening. How beat up is Teddy Bridgewater? Vic Fangio talked about player safety and how disgraceful the Ravens running a play was. But he now has a player who's had a concussion, who has a foot injury, and he's going to put him out against Myles Garrett. So fascinating to see how that one goes. Can the Broncos figure out how to utilize two really solid running backs? I think that's the other question. They have two really good running backs. I don't seem to know how to use them. Despite all those things, given the list of players, are we doing picks now or are we waiting until
quick second? We're presented by Matchbook. Matchbook have a new offer column, so maybe you want to bet on the Browns tonight. £15, €15 welcome offer. Money back as cash if your first bet loses using code Irish NFL Show. New customers only. Sign up today using bonus code Irish NFL Show. Deposit at least £25 euros. Place your first bet. If it loses, they will refund your stake as cash. 18 over. Terms and conditions apply. gamble aware. It's time. I've been waiting for this. I really haven't. Like literally, really haven't. Boy, shift away, just shift away a bit. Yeah, just a touch. Colin, go on, entertain us. Picks presented by Matchbook.
With the litany of injuries that the Browns have, I think Vic Fangio had a very kind start to the season. I think, given that the Raiders had an interim head coach, that was kind to him, and I think the injuries that the Browns had this evening have been kind. I think the Broncos have to take advantage of it. Otherwise, I think that the season ends here and now. So I think the Broncos have put in a performance, much like they did in 2018. But as I said before, they finished 2018 6-10. But I think they do enough tonight to get the win in Cleveland.
Yeah, Lindsey touched on the fact that, the Chargers and the Chiefs can go in shootouts, and now the Raiders within the division go in shootouts. And she challenged whether the Broncos are good enough to go into these back and forth games. But for me, this Browns team, I know they got a lot of players out, but this team for me runs through Chubb. When Chubb plays, they're averaging around 150 yards a game. When he's not, the max they've hit is 90. And the average points goes from 30 down to 90. And they haven't scored more than 19 points when Chubb hasn't played. So for me, on that basis, I can't see them putting up more than 20 points on a Broncos defense that on their day can be pretty good. And I think this fits into where the Broncos are offensively. They're not going to put up massive points, but do I think they can put up enough to win this game? I do. I think Bridgewater will have a number of drives, run the clock, get a couple of touchdowns, and put it on Case Keenum to beat them. And I don't believe they will. I think the Broncos will win. And I'm going for the Broncos for the third week in a row. And the last 2 weeks, they've lost. So I think we know what's going to happen with me picking the Broncos.
Thank you for that.
I'm still a little bit disappointed in all of you for not getting the last Boy Scout reference. With the killer American football player, like Shane Black. Screenplay, Bruce Willis. Anyone? Okay. Anyway, we'll move on.
Anyone?
Bruce
What
Willis.
movie is that? Anyone?
Bruce Willis. Die Hard.
Anyone?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Michael. What was that, Brian?
Bruce Willis was in Die Hard, wasn't he?
Yes, Bruce Willis was
Happy
in Die
days.
Hard.
Christmas is around the corner. We'll be watching Die Hard again soon enough. Happy days.
That was probably the last movie you
A
watched.
Christmas movie, but
Die Hard if you're going to stay up till 4:30 in the morning watching this game.
Well, I mean, like you say that, I think it's going to be quite interesting to watch because we don't actually know what offense the Browns will be able to put out. I mean, like, they've activated Jarvis Landry from IR. As Lindsey just alluded to, we don't quite know the inactives at the moment, but both their tackles have been injured and were missing last week. JC Treader isn't coming back through the door necessarily. We believe both the running backs are out. I think one of them's been declared out, and we expect the other one to be.
They're both out.
Mayfield, they have been both out. Okay, Mayfield is out. We know this. And out of all of this, and we kind of briefly touched on it with Lindsey, the Browns' defense is bad. It is a complete mess this season. They have been giving up points left, right, and center. They were, obliterated by the Chargers and the Cardinals. And yes, of course, they are good offenses. But they've been, had Clowney injured. They haven't had consistency at the linebacker position. And in the secondary, they're giving up blown coverages left, right, and center. To me, this is like when I picked the Lions against the Bengals. There's more about the Lions than the Bengals. But in this instance, to me, it's more about the fact that those injuries are just too much to overcome. There's too much damage to their team. And I think the Broncos are competent. They're certainly competent on offense. They're not good, don't get me wrong. There's never going to be a mistake we'll make. But they are good enough not to make silly enough mistakes and to exploit the opportunity. For me, it's the Broncos. But don't worry, guys. I don't think they're good enough to be any good teams. I just don't think that the Browns, with the injuries they've got, are actually good tonight. So Broncos for me as well, guys.
Thank you so much for that honest opinion at the end. Keesum.
Keenum, I'm sorry.
Imagine signing the quarterback and calling him the wrong name. Again,
Sorry, guys. I know.
Case Keenum, I'm sorry.
When did that take place?
I'm sorry, Brent.
When did that happen?
At his introductory press conference, just after we had given him $18 million.
Good Lord.
Okay.
It's a bit like Van Gaal when he called Chris Smalling Mike Smalling.
Smalling. That was better. Right. Well, apart from Colin, did you two boys at the bottom watch the Broncos Raiders game of the weekend? Watch highlights of it? Watch a 40-minute
Yeah.
tape of it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but
They're not winning this game tonight.
the Raiders are a good side. Let's not dismiss how good the Raiders are. In fairness,
Are you taking the piss?
The
Seriously,
Raiders.
the Broncos. Hold on. The Broncos boys scored 10 points through the first 3 quarters, and we're down 31-10 at the start of the fourth quarter. Are you trying to tell me this Broncos team are going to go in tonight after playing that?
The result at the end, in fairness, if you'd stepped away, you didn't know how the game played out, and you looked at it and saw, I think it was a 10-point win in the end. You know, the reality is that's not a fair reflection of the game. But I believe the Raiders are a team that are a serious threat for the playoffs. I know they've got all this craziness going on, and that's why I picked the Broncos last week. But I think you're doing a disservice for a really good Broncos. Really good Raiders team.
Let me just sum it up then. The offense is probably manageable with a half-decent quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't believe is fit. I'd love to see how far he's passed the protocol today to play. You'll wake up tomorrow morning if you don't watch the game, and I would say Drew Lock will be in by mid-second quarter. That's panic signs already. Now, this whole bull of saying they've too many injuries, the Browns, Case Keenum's coming in. If I'm Case Keenum, boys, you're talking diehard. You're talking yippee-ki-yay, lads. Here we go. All the Browns have to do tonight is sack the quarterback, get the confidence down in that Broncos offense. You stopping the field goals and get something. And you look at guys like Jarvis Landry in the offense, and they have a chance tonight. I'm taking the Browns, and it kills me to say it. And if the Browns win this game tonight, Fangio should be gone tomorrow morning, because I would say his heart sank yesterday when he seen the news about Baker Mayfield, because his excuses then went and just died there enough. But I don't think Teddy Bridgewater sees out this game, and I'm going against my own team here, and it just pisses me off that we're sitting here week 6, 1 or 2 players away from giving it a playoff run, especially in a division where you got the Chiefs that are struggling. Had to put that in. Sorry, Brando.
Well, I mean, Michael, the Broncos are in the same space as the Chiefs. You're only 1 game out of the division lead. Like, maybe all hope is not lost. I'm seeing you with head in your hands. I'm kind of like, should we call the Samaritans? Do you need?
Have you watched the last 3 weeks? Von Miller hasn't been there. Justin Simmons, great guy. Colin, he hasn't been great the last couple of weeks, has he? Let's be honest.
Can I jump in with a quick point? But this is the reality of the NFL, right? We say it every week, right? 1 week you're up, 1 week you're down, right? If they win this evening, and despite what you said, Colin, Michael, they really should win this game, right? With all the injuries the Browns have. And then you play, and I don't mean to look too far ahead, you're playing Washington at home next week. Washington are a train wreck at the moment. You could, by Sunday week, be 5-3, and the whole landscape of the season changed.
Look no further than Monday night. The back-to-back weeks, the Titans lost to the Jets, and they beat the Bills. Like, any given Sunday, any given day, things can change that quickly.
Just on that Washington point, Washington put over 30 up against the Falcons. The Broncos will not score over 30 points. The Cowboys next, the Eagles after that, the Chargers after that, the Chiefs after that. They'll beat the Lions on the 12th of December. Then they'll lose to the Bengals, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. Good night. I have nothing more to say about this game tonight. I'm really pissed off, and it's just such a waste of talent. But I hope anybody that enjoys the game tonight, watches the game, enjoys the game. I want to thank Matchbook. I want to thank the lads. I want to thank Trust Gaming for all it. And boys, we got through London. We're here. Is anybody set up tonight to watch the game?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay up and watch it.
There you are,
Brian.
Me? No, I think I'll take this one in the morning. Thanks. Airplane mode, and catch it before the real work starts in the morning.
The real work starts in the morning. Mark, are you gonna get a wee pizza maybe and watch the game?
Another one. No, I'm working late, but I'm not going to stay up for this. I'm going to catch it in the morning like Brian is as well. I value my sleep too much at this stage.
We're back at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and then we're live at 9 or 10. I don't even know what time. We're live on Monday evening. I'm in Portugal. Apparently, there's a bank holiday down south. What would I know, boys? But sure, look, we'll have good crack on the bank holiday Monday live. We're back on Sunday with our usual show, non-London, for once on Zoom, boys. Looking forward to it. Any final thoughts, Colin? We'll start with you.
Looking forward to discussing the end of that Bills Titans game in our show at the weekend. And yeah, I like as Brian said, like for the Broncos, I think tonight is enormous because I don't fear Washington. I do fear Dallas. I really fear what a Dallas offense might do. But the Broncos could be 5-3 in the next 2 weeks. So Vic Fangio, the stage is yours.
Anything to add, Brian?
No, I was looking through the fixtures schedule for this weekend, and there's not a lot of games that are standing out. Like one enticing one for me is the Titans, and see how they fare against the Chiefs. And we made a mistake last week. We were saying if the Dolphins had won, they go on their bye week. In fact, the Dolphins are playing this weekend. So
yes, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
So that has happened in the past. Week,
it has happened in the past. Some teams get a bye, some teams don't. So I only picked up on that when, as Mark touched on earlier, that Flores was getting interrogated about this Falcons game coming up, and I went, "Gee, what's the panic? It's a fortnight away." Only to realise an hour later it's in fact next weekend. But you look at the games later on in the 9 o'clock slot. Cards are home to the Texans, Bucks are home to the Bears, and then you've got one more that stood out. The Rams, Matthew Stafford are home to the Lions. I mean, there's some games later on.
I will point out there were weeks last year and weeks every year in the NFL where you look at it and you go, no, that's and all of a sudden every single week there's a surprise. Also this weekend we have the Ravens Bengals to look forward to. I think that'll be a fascinating game.
Yeah. Well, the final point I was going to make, I have a funny feeling we might see quite a lot of consistent numbers across the board on the picks this weekend, but there will be a surprise somewhere. Yeah.
And Mark, just finally, Mark, for me, I don't know if you want to respond to this. I don't think Deshaun Watson's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough call for the Dolphins to make. I mean, if he's going anywhere, it is Stephen Russell, it's the Dolphins, but has that hung over that team a little bit this season as well? I mean, there's so much chatter in the offseason as well, but trading for him with numbers of legal situation, no idea if he's going to be banned, is very difficult. I will say this, Brian Flores, I'm kind of saying, well, look, the pressure is under 3 of the next 5 games. They've got the Falcons, they've got the Texans, and they've got the Jets in those 5 games. And if you look at in 3 of those 5 games, you're looking to save your job. That kind of helps a little bit. And somebody's got next week is the best week because you go back, it is, but then you've got different times as well. So
no, Mark, we have a bigger problem next Sunday.
Hallelujah.
We've got a Halloween, have the Halloween party, people knocking on our door.
That is true. That is true.
Hey, well, me and Colin was worried about that.
One other thought, Michael, and I'm just going to steal this directly from Bill Barnwell on ESPN, who's always writes really insightful and fantastic columns. He wrote 10 theoretical trades that the team should consider before the trade deadline. The one that took my fancy was actually the Titans. And he said, hey, Titans, you still don't have a great defense. Your team is aging. You've only got a limited window here. Go all in. And he was advocating for trading for Xavier Howard, saying Miami might be in a sell now mode and just dumbing down to next year. And I was kind of, that would be intriguing. And that would be a very interesting, well worthwhile making move if Miami were minded to sell. So look, reminder, the trade deadline's coming up. Always interesting to keep an eye on who is going to be the movers and shakers at that point in the season.
Absolutely, and we'll be back at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Well, thank everybody for joining us again last weekend on Monday Night Football as well. Great crack, and I hope you boys enjoyed the game tonight. And thanks so much for everyone watching. Thanks to Trust, thanks to Match Group. Lads, see you again on on Sunday morning. See you then, lads.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Mr. Cockerell, Mark, welcome in, my friend. You're here. You've made it. Duval.